Hello again everybody, this is Anne Orbin and I'm recording another video in my series about managing difficult emotions that may be arising during the COVID-19 lockdown. And today this video is going to be about managing anxiety, fears and dread. So I'm speaking to you as a former psychiatrist and also as a former psychotherapist, and I've expressed in previous videos, such as when your greatest fear is being by yourself, that I'm very worried about a secondary epidemic of mental health problems, so that if there's anything at all we can all do while we're shut in our own houses to manage the very natural feelings of anxiety that are coming up, then I hope we can all do so. So I'll be covering everything in this video, from just feeling nervous periodically right up to panic attacks, and also to dealing with anxiety by becoming very obsessional or compulsive. And I'll also be thinking about dread, which is when we're paralysed by anxiety. But the first thing to say is that it's actually completely normal and in fact healthy to feel anxious. So if we think about it, we as animals need a way of escaping from danger. And if we see a threat, then we've got a whole system in our bodies which switches on to make sure that we can either deal with or get away from the threat. The problem is the same system in our bodies is switched on even when we exaggerate a minor threat into a big threat, or even when we have a completely imaginary fear. So I'll just start by telling you a little bit more about this system, which is hardwired into our bodies, and it's largely fuelled by a chemical you've probably heard of, which in Britain we call adrenaline, and in the States it's known as epinephrine. And as soon as we feel threatened, adrenaline is released, and that changes the blood flow in our bodies. So we get a rush of blood to our heads. That helps us to think quickly and problem solve. We also get more blood flowing to our heart, so our heart rate goes up, and we also start to breathe more quickly to oxygenate the blood. We also get blood flow to our legs in case we need to run away, and to our arms and fists in case we need to fight. Now we've only got one volume of blood in our bodies, so it's taken away very quickly from areas that aren't needed to fight danger, such as our intestines. So it's very common for people when they're anxious to get a feeling in the pit of their stomach or butterflies in their tummy. And if you think about young people queuing up to go into an exam, often lots of people have to rush off to the loo for a quick wee, and that's because our sphincters don't work so well when we're pumping adrenaline to the danger-related parts of our body. So it's all very well if there's a real threat, such as needing to get away from an articulated lorry that's mounted the pavement, just say, especially if we've got a pushchair in tow, but it's not so helpful when we're simply stuck in our houses during this lockdown. So what a lot of people are feeling now is the other pattern that happens with adrenaline, which is just feeling frozen, feeling helpless and kind of blinking like a rabbit in the headlights. So we'll have a think about some of these mechanisms. So the key is that anxiety is healthy, but it should be proportionate to the real danger that's there. And if it becomes extreme, it's a problem. And one way it can become extreme is by people going to great lengths to fend off that anxiety. So by checking that doors and windows are locked exactly 15 times, or by religiously cleaning things. And some people, I remember one person who cut their lawn with nail scissors every day. They just had this sense that they'd never settle unless it looked perfect. So really this video is about coping with normal anxiety, but it's also about recognising when you've gone to an extreme and you might need additional professional help. So what happens if our body gets flooded with adrenaline, but there isn't an enemy to fight or a saber-toothed tiger to run away from, is that we can end up feeling agitated and stressed. So we can get tingling in our hands and feet. That's partly by the muscles being aroused, ready to fight or flee, but it can also be due to hyperventilating because we're breathing far too quickly and in a shallow way, and that can lead to tingling, including in our lips, and that can be a sign that you're hyperventilating. It's why people having panic attacks sometimes walk around with a paper bag in their pocket, because if you breathe into a paper bag, it stops these strange sensations of feeling lightheaded and tingling. Now, our blood pressure can go up, which is obviously a problem if you've already got blood pressure or heart problems. Or we just might get a headache or a migraine from that. Or we can feel the tension held in our jaw as if we're clenching down onto the anxiety as we don't have a way of releasing it. We can't sleep because we're hyper alert. Our digestive systems can suddenly go awry. Also, we can have a dry mouth. There's lots of symptoms that can occur, and it's important to just notice what's going on in your body and just ask, am I actually feeling very anxious and not admitting it to myself, and is there anything that I could do about this? Because otherwise our anxious thoughts can spiral, so we can feel uncomfortable because our heart's beating rapidly, and we might suddenly think, oh my God, I'm having a heart attack, or that the dry mouth and the gut problems mean that we've got some dreadful disease. So being able to nip this in the bud, not letting it get to an extreme, is very helpful. So one of the techniques that I've mentioned in previous videos is absolutely fantastic if you're trying to manage anxiety, because it literally switches off the adrenaline system, and that's as simple as deep breathing. So I've spoken about this before. It's a good idea if you can identify a place in your house where you can be on your own, where you can just be very quiet, where you can sit calmly and breathe slowly and deeply, using the muscles of your belly to draw in the breath and to push it out again. Some people like to focus on a photograph of a place that's always relaxed them, or of loved ones while they're doing this. Some people like to imagine breathing in calmness and peace while they breathe out stress. And this is particularly helpful if you become aware of tense feelings anywhere in your body. You can actually breathe in to those tense areas and relax any tight muscles. And if moving a body part feels appropriate while you're doing your deep breathing to release some of the energy, like flicking your hands or moving your jaw, then do that. And if you're struggling to rise above the anxiety and you can't get your breathing rate to slow down, you can focus on breathing in while you count to 2, holding your breath while you count to 4, and very slowly use your abdominal muscles to push your breath out while you count to 8. And as it happens, this is a very good way of dealing with hiccups, if that's a problem that you get. If you do the 2, 4, 8 rhythm 3 or 4 times, it usually gets rid of hiccups. So as you breathe, what will happen is, thoughts will crop up and you'll feel like they're distracting you, and indeed they might be. But just see if you can notice the thoughts, because they'll be the things that you're worried about, or the things that you feel you should have done and haven't done, and just watch the thoughts go by. Some people like to imagine that they're sitting on a train and looking out of the window, and it's as the train moves past things, you're moving past thoughts. Other people find a way of rising above the thoughts, such as imagining that they're going up in a lift, elevator, or on an escalator, up to a balcony where they can look down at the thoughts, worries and fears below them and just see how small they are. From this observing place, we're able to look at what's worrying us and begin to develop a bit of distance, so that anxiety and fear doesn't overwhelm us, but we can find a coping strategy instead. In a previous video, I also spoke about being able to rise above one's feelings and thoughts by imagining with your eyes closed that you're going up a mountain path to meet a wise being. Now obviously you wouldn't climb a mountain with your eyes closed, but it's easier to hold the picture in mind of if you have your eyes closed. You can imagine the path under your feet, the sound of bird song, the smells of blossom as you go up the mountain. And if you can get to that point, not only can you look down on the landscape of your feelings and thoughts below, but you may also be able to get counsel from the wise being, words of wisdom, coping strategies, because of course the wise being is actually the wise part of ourselves. So after you've been breathing calmly and deeply for a while, just really check your position in the chair, make sure you're comfortable, you're not tense. Notice any body parts where you're holding tension or energy. So if your neck is tight, you might like to massage it a little bit. If your foot feels really restless, like it wants to kick somebody or run away, then just move it a bit. And when you come out of this peaceful time of deep breathing, you might want to move some more. Do some stretches, run on the spot, lie on your back and put your legs in the air and do air cycling if your legs are feeling energised. If you feel like punching something, then you can punch or wrestle a pillow safely. If there's a lot of energy in your jaw, you might want to shout a bit. And you can go for a jog or dance or just whirl around the room. All of these things can release the tension that adrenaline causes, because if we don't release it, we can end up having a sort of exhausted come down where we feel utterly wrung out afterwards. So it's about recognising where the fearful emotions sit in your body and trying to relax those. And the shallow breathing technique helps us to be calm on a more generalised basis so that we don't react to every little thing that comes up. I'll just give you an example. So Mary lives on her own and she's always considered herself to be a nervy person. So she jumps at loud noises and she starts to panic if she hasn't heard from her children and grandchildren for a while. Now she's always been fairly healthy and hasn't, really been a person to go to the doctors very much. But since this coronavirus has been out there, the real threat, she's started to think that every little symptom in her body could be because she's got the virus. So a dry mouth and a slight cough make her think she's got the virus. Now she has a chat to her neighbour next door, Carol, who suggests that they could do the breathing exercises and relaxation techniques at the same time each day and compare notes. And what happens is that when Mary starts to do this, she notices that as she breathes deeply, a lot of fears come up, more than she realised. She's afraid that one of her grandchildren will go back to school, bring the virus home, and a member of her family will die. she's really worried that she's going to end up having to go to A&E and see all these people looking like they're in alien spacesuits, and that she might catch the virus there if she hasn't already got at it. But using her neighbour's advice, she imagines going up in a lift to the 5th floor of the local department store and being able to look down from the coffee bar to her thoughts and feelings below. And she giggles to herself because she realises everything looks much smaller there, and she can have a cup of tea and feel better. But just as her neighbour suggested, she makes a few notes about this so that she can look back on it over time and discuss it with the neighbour. And she does have a cup of tea and a biscuit, and in fact she's tuned into a really good thing to do, because a light snack sends the blood back to our guts while we digest it, which switches off the adrenaline system, just like the deep breathing. But of course it's important not just to keep comfort eating. So, when she speaks to Carol, her neighbour, later and they compare notes, she thinks, well, maybe there is something in this and I'm going to carry on with it. So, thus far in this video we've thought about the physical effects that adrenaline can have on our bodies, and also that it can magnify feelings of anxiety. But this system also can lead to a whole pattern of anxious thinking if we don't nip it in the bud. So people who are anxious tend to think that they can't cope. They think that other people won't be there to comfort them or won't know what to do, and they feel that the whole world is a fearful place. Now, to an extent, we are all facing a very real threat, but when that starts to impinge upon every thought that we have, it's a problem. And if we are social distancing, if we go out for essential shopping and otherwise self-isolating, actually we've minimised the risks as much as we can. So, what's a really good idea to do is to, if you're having lots of anxious thoughts, see if you can find a way of parking them. This also goes for any obsessional thoughts you're having, like you need to wash your shopping in bleach 20 times. Just notice that you're having that thought and tell it you're going to park it for now because you're going to have a worry time later. Then set a time of the day for about 30 minutes, maybe 5:30 to 6 o'clock in the evening, and just have that as your worry time. And I'm suggesting a time early in the evening because it's a good while before you go to bed, so your worries will have settled, and also just before you're likely to have something to eat, because eating will turn off the worry system. And when it gets to your allocated worry time, make yourself worry as much as you can. Just worry about everything, worry and worry. And what's really interesting is we actually can't worry non-stop for more than about a quarter of an hour. Our brains get bored with it, so we stop worrying. And on other days, we might get to our worry time and think, actually, I don't think I've got anything to worry about at the moment, so we don't bother. Or we might forget the worry time altogether. So this is actually a way of helping us tolerate difficult feelings by sitting with them for a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour, but then noticing that they burn out. And it's also a way of actually not worrying very much at all in the future. Now, if you can recognise your pattern of anxious thinking, you can also begin to challenge the thoughts. So if you remember in the example, Mary worried that a dry mouth and some other symptoms, maybe shallow breathing, meant that she caught the COVID-19 virus. She could challenge those thoughts, as her neighbour suggests, by looking on the NHS website for the actual symptoms of COVID-19, and she discovers that she'd need to have loads more to qualify, and anyway it hasn't been getting any worse. And then she had worries about her family not looking after themselves, So she can check, and they reassure her, yes, we are self-isolating, there's no risk here. But Mary might start to think about other things too. What she might remember is that when she was a child, she had to be rushed into hospital. She'd got really, really terrible tummy pains, and her mother said, you probably ate something bad. Now, in fact, Mary had appendicitis and had to have an operation to have her appendix out. There's nothing to do with what she'd eaten. But as a small girl, she was in hospital at a time when family weren't allowed to visit except for maybe an hour in the afternoon. And if there was a risk of infection, your parents had to stay outside the room and just wave at you through glass. And Mary realises that some of these old anxieties are cropping up. This fear of being ill, of there being nobody there to comfort her. And she wonders if she's been checking the sell-by dates on all of the patterns in her cupboards, because she's still got this fear after 50 years that she might eat something bad and then be abandoned. So notice any thoughts that come up or any old feelings and make a note of these in a journal or a notebook, because you can actually heal old anxieties as well as new anxieties, and we've now got the time to do this, the freedom to do it, and we should take that as a golden opportunity. So I've covered in this video some of the very common issues that can come up around anxiety, but there are a couple of other areas that I want to cover, as adrenaline can make us react in other ways as well. So I've already mentioned that we can become more obsessive and feel compelled to do certain behaviours. So wiping down your shopping well or leaving it for 12 hours before you unpack it is exactly what's being recommended, but washing it with bleach 20 times is excessive. Washing your hands when you've touched something that's come in from outside is what's recommended, but washing them 20 times until your skin cracks just isn't. It's being excessive. So see if you can notice these behaviours, forgive yourself for having them, it's understandable, but do them less. Now, adrenaline can liven people up in more ways than making us aware of danger and able to deal with danger. Some people seek thrills because it gives them an adrenaline rush. So unfortunately, you may have a young person in the house who's refusing to self-isolate, who's going out and engaging in risky behaviours like meeting up with mates, smoking drugs, whatever. If you have a young person who's doing that, they're probably in denial about the actual threat from the COVID virus, and you might want to show them my video, How to Make a Vomit Bomb. But also just tune in to that person's deeper feelings, because they might also be feeling very anxious that they're going to lose friends, they might be afraid of their own existence continuing like many of us are. And if you can acknowledge their feelings rather than simply telling them what to do, this is likely to be more helpful. If we think about the phrase pumped up, that relates to adrenaline. And what we mean by that is somebody's spoiling for a fight. Now, unfortunately, we may find ourselves becoming more irritable or tetchy or aggressive even than we would be under normal circumstances, or maybe with a partner or a child who's becoming angry, possibly even verbally or physically aggressive. And I have made a previous video on dealing with conflict while we're in the pressure cooker of corona lockdown, which you might find helpful. If people are getting angry or aggressive within a closed environment like the home, there are resources out there to help you. There are abuse hotlines, but for most people it will luckily be a lower level of aggression that they're having to deal with. And taking time out is very helpful. Taking a walk on your own or encouraging the more aggressive partner to do that. But also there are communication techniques which you can use, which are helpful, which are not about blaming the other person, but simply using I statements. So, I notice that you're banging things around and you seem cross that you can't get on with anything because the children are around. I feel stressed. We're all feeling stressed at the moment. I feel very anxious about what's going on, and I think that's making us all more stressed. I wonder if we could find a different way of dealing with it. I'm wondering if we could maybe all go out into the garden and kick a ball around, or maybe we could make some pizza and throw the dough around. So using I statements, I notice, I feel, I wonder if, takes the pressure off the other person. You're not blaming them so they don't become angrier. You don't become more defensive and set up a pattern that's hard to break. And you're also suggesting a practical solution. So try that and see if it helps. Now, the final reaction that adrenaline can cause in our bodies is making us freeze, just like a rabbit caught in the headlights of a car. So it can be really difficult to be feeling a lot of internal tension, but helpless, not knowing what to do about it. And I really recommend that you go for your walks, that you release some of the energy in your body by making sounds, shaking your arms, jumping up and down on the spot, air cycling, play wrestling with a member of the family, whatever, to release some of this energy, because the more you can let the feelings of anxiety and dread flow through you, release them, the better you'll feel. And remember that when you're doing the deep breathing, breathe in a sense of peace and calm, and breathe out the stress that you're feeling. So we're all living under a real threat. But already communities are coming together determined to build a better, safer, more connected future. So tune into that network now. Reach out, speak to a neighbour, tell other people in your family if you're feeling stressed. You're not alone, they'll be feeling stressed as well. Release the energy that you're holding in your body. So for now, thank you for watching. If you think this would be helpful for someone else, please share it. Stay well, stay psychologically strong, respect your own fears and actions and those of other people, and be as kind and caring as you can be, not just to others, but to yourself. See you soon. Thanks for watching.